that over there is the farm that you can see from here, but apart from that, there's no other farm in sight except maybe over there. Yeah, there's one just there. Here we are next to the train tracks, and this footpath leads all the way to some shops near Newcastle under Lyme. So it's a nice section of footpath. Welcome to the first of, I hope, many of my wanderings across some of these beautiful undulating, rolling, very low hills that we find in most of England. I think, you go to places like Wales and you can find much higher mountains, well, actual mountains. I think for a hill to be called a mountain, it has to be a certain height. And so yeah, here we are going along this narrow footpath, which is still, it's still holding its own. The grass has grown a lot recently. It's way more high, well, it's way higher than it was even just a few weeks ago. I think the hot sunshine and some rain has really brought everything that extra level of alive, which it wasn't not so long ago. But yeah, across from here, I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing across from the other side of the railway. There are some marshlands, and sometimes you see skylarks and you hear a lot of pheasants. In this part of the world, there's definitely a lot of pheasants, mainly for hunting purposes. But yeah, they reproduce quite... you can hear... That was a pheasant. And yeah, you get quite a lot of them reproducing. And basically, the countryside at the moment, all our endeavours to restore some of the biodiversity that's been lost over the years, there's a heck of a lot of pheasants, but not much else. I mean, you get the odd skylark, as I said. There's quite a lot of rooks and crows. I'm not sure of the difference between a rook and a crow. If anyone knows, let me know what the difference is. But yeah, I'm no scientist, I'm no biologist, so I don't really know all the ins and outs. But as I've been living through, changes in the amounts of different types of animals that I see, I mean, maybe not as much in my own lifetime, but I certainly remember a time when I was younger where there were more variety of insects, and actually just generally more insects around. I think, along this path you'd expect to find a lot of insect life, but looking around as I walk along, there aren't that many. You find ants are okay. There's a lot of butterflies missing though. I've only seen a few recently, and along this path so far I've just been walking probably about 20 minutes or so. In those 20 minutes I haven't seen a single butterfly. Of course, it could be because it's not early morning, it's getting a bit later in the day. But anyway, as I was saying, I'm no biologist, so I'm just making my observations as I wander through the countryside. And we're coming up now to a slight end of this hill, which goes alongside the train tracks just below me. And it's a nice path. There's a lot of greenery, especially in the way of grass. And I think in this field here, usually there's cows. I've been down this path once before. And yeah, that's the way it is. I think I can hear a train, so we're gonna wait and see if it comes along past us on the right here. Yeah, look at that. Amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gather, most of the UK, especially in England, I suppose, and maybe Wales, Scotland, Ireland, yeah, probably the whole of the UK. I think most of the forest is managed, and a lot of it, I suppose, is used for wood on a commercial level. But I think obviously there are certain areas like the New Forest and places like Sherwood Forest, I suppose plenty of places where the woodland is protected. And some of these woodlands have some very old trees. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are some trees in the oldest woodlands that are well over 500 years old, and maybe even older, I'm not sure. I can't tell you the exact figure. But what I find intriguing is the fact that maybe before the Romans arrived 2,000 years ago, there must have been trees that maybe were thousands of years old, and to think that that would have been covering the land at some point is really quite a bizarre thought. So we're now right alongside the train tracks, and you can see that train just went past, and yeah, it's quite overgrown here. So yeah, one of the things that I think about, and I'm sure a lot of you think about, is how things are going to change in our generation. Things that, you know, for example, from the point of view of someone that enjoys creating music as well as listening to music, the idea of Spotify is a great one for streaming, and YouTube is also a great source for entertainment and a lot of knowledge and a lot of information. And I always wonder, you know, how long are these platforms going to exist? What is their shelf life? And also the fact that it's a funny time because we're seeing a lot of changes in the political sphere. There are things that we don't really have much control over. And so that's something that I think, for me personally, I find maybe slightly intimidating, but also I find it something that I can try and not think about so much when I am in the now and in the present, and just taking a walk by the railway, which is actually a really pleasant thing to do. And I think I've learnt from my short time on this planet, 32 years isn't a very long time to be here, but in that time I think I've figured out that in the end it's very important to be less stressed. This isn't easy to, I suppose, I mean, the word stress to me it has so much stress in it. It's like a word that I try to avoid using because I feel it is too strong a word, and it's a word that makes you feel something really deeply. And sometimes when you're out having a walk, that's probably the last thing you want, because instead of being too internalized and thinking about all the things that you need to worry about, it's all about perception and being perceptive of what's going on around you. And that is something that I think I've learned that has made me see the world in a slightly different way when I'm out in it. Instead of trying to understand it, I'm just trying to appreciate it and just take it in, because I don't have to understand everything and I don't have to have an answer for everything. So I think perception is, something that I wanted to cover in this short video. And I am no expert, I am no scientist, as I've said earlier. There's nothing that I say that I am saying for you to, think that it's fact. It isn't. Because that's another thing. Nothing is fact. There are very few things that are actually fact. One fact is that we will die. That is one definite fact. And the other fact is that I am now walking in a countryside environment. And those two things, to me at this moment in time, should be the only facts. But because, rents, council tax, whatever you want to add to the mix that's going on in your head of what to deal with and when, and who to email and who to call and when to call them and why to call them. So one of the things that I'm trying to invest in at the moment is working out ways in which I can make my life easier without having to resort to constant worry and thought, and making life easier so that I'm able to do the things that I enjoy more often. Now, of course, this is the thing. Everyone has different priorities. And I think one thing that I notice is that the more things that you need to do, the more you're adding to your brain stuff. So it's like, I think what I'm trying to say is that sometimes less is more. And definitely when it comes to enjoyment of life, if you're able to find peace of mind and a sense of enjoyment from very simple things, like, for example, the act of going for a walk in an attractive place. I mean, there's no doubt that these hills and these trees and the whole environment, I've listened to the scientists and from their point of view, going out for a walk in nature is actually a very beneficial thing for our minds and our bodies. And I think I've taken that on board. And I think generally just movement's good because it gives us a purpose. And sometimes, because of the modern world we live in, a lot of our purpose is taken away from us through the means of computer screens. And, basically the way we work has changed a lot. Whereas maybe 200 years ago, 300 years ago, people would be working on the fields and it would be a different type of life, wouldn't it? I think you'd be much more pressed to find certain items of food. You'd have to work way harder to get your ends meet, let's say. And you'd obviously be in a situation where you'd have to maybe work for someone else. A lot of people now are fortunate enough to be self-employed or have their own company. And that's a big difference. I think our perception of the world has changed in that sense as well. So, yeah, I think all these things, I don't know. To me, it feels like we have obviously taken away some of our purpose by creating a world where we let machines dictate how we live our lives. And that, the first thing that springs to mind is how we use machines to pay for our food now. You go to a shop, you get your food, and you go up to the self-checkout, and a machine is dealing with your order. It's processing the items. It is, giving you the option to pay. You're paying a machine to give you food. So that to me is definitely a big change in the way that we interact. And that also has these implications where people tend to be more isolated unless they have a good community. And I think community is one thing that is definitely something that has come out of people being more aware of these things. And actually, since COVID, I think community has taken a step, a bigger step as well, because a lot of local pubs, places that were closed down during the pandemic and before, years before that, pubs had been closing down due to lack of customers. Now, I think hopefully there has been a revival of some old derelict pubs, and that's a really nice thing because they are a community. There's a little insect there. If in doubt, flick it. So there you go. That is my thoughts. I think we're in an interesting time because things are changing, some for the better, some for the worse, but mostly people are becoming more aware of their own existence and trying to be part of a community. There goes another train. I think that will be the last train because I'm coming up to the end of this walk now. And I just thought I'd say thank you to anyone who's watched this video because, you know, I haven't scripted this. This is not something that I've thought about too much. It's just things that are in my mind at the moment and things that I'll probably elaborate more on in future episodes. I'd love to know your thoughts and anything that I've talked about. If it's affected you in a good or a bad way, do let me know. I would really love to hear your opinions because in the end, there's never enough opinions. But yeah, enjoy your days, whatever you're up to, and thank you for watching.